So guys, whatever we are doing manually, whatever the postman collections we have done here, right? Get, post, put, batch methods. So the same thing we can do in automation. Okay, same we can do in automation. So if you guys understand postman tool, so there is a code section. Okay, so let's select the get method. There is a code section. So it will generate the code automatically. Code. Okay, he whatever the language you need. So if you want Python with request module, it will generate the Python request. If you want some other like Java, REST, or anything, it will generate the code based on their methods. Okay. So now, how we can do the automation using request module in Python? Okay, and how to automate request along with request? How we can involve a PyTest framework? Okay, let's see. Let's jump into here. Okay, let's create a API practice. Okay, so assume that I have a folder, project folder. Under project folder, I have written API practice. So what are the key components we need to develop a API testing framework along with PyTest? Okay, so first thing, under project, we are going to declare a folder API something. Inside that we have API objects. Okay, API objects folder. How we have page objects, right? In the same manner, we can define some API object folder. Here, what we can write? API endpoints. Okay, API endpoints. Okay. And here we can write helper methods folder. Okay, so under helpers, we can write helpers using API endpoints. Okay, now under test folder, under test, we can write the test cases. So what is the convention to create the file name in PyTest? We have to start with test underscore file name. For example, login.py. Okay. So here we can write the test cases. Okay. So there is a folder structure we can follow. And even if you want to maintain a separate requirements.txt for APIs, we can maintain. And we can write the confess.py file. What is the purpose of confess.py file? Here we can write the fixtures in PyTest. Okay. So what is a fixture? Fixture is nothing but like kind of a function we can use to perform setup and tear down actions. And the function is the default scope, and it is having scopes like class, session, module, like that. Okay. So this is the folder structure we need to follow. Okay. While doing API testing, keep in mind that we are going to use any one of the framework. If the framework structure, we have to follow like this. Okay. In the same manner, how we can write it, we can see. Okay. So assume that it is my project API testing folder. Okay. Here, first what I have to do, API objects. Let's create a folder called API. Maybe. So what is the difference between folder and package? Okay, so here I'm creating a API objects package. Means the package means it is having init function by default. Okay, inside that we can create the Python files. Okay, so let's create a Python file. So here I can segregate my test cases into multiple endpoints. Okay, under API objects, I can write all the API objects. Okay, so product list is the one API endpoint. Brand list is one API endpoint. Okay. Such product is one API endpoint. Verify login is one API endpoint. Verify login. Okay. So user account is one API endpoint. Delete account is one API endpoint. Update account is one API endpoint. Okay, get user details is one API endpoint. So whatever we are saying, these are the API endpoints. Okay, so using this, we can write all these objects into object folder. Okay, let's say API objects. So generally, we can keep name with particular product name, or depends on the user details. So in the same manner, we can, let's create user API objects. Okay, so user API objects. So how we can create a class? What is the best practices while writing any Python file we have to follow? What is the best practices? First, we have to add it doc strings. Okay, so this class or file specifies that. Okay, user API, user related API objects. Okay, something, just it is our information purpose. So in our company, if you are working in real time, right, even along with the doc strings, we can provide the author name also. Okay, author, like this. Okay, now how we can create a class? By using class keyword. Okay, I can say user API something. This is my class name. And what is the best practices we have to follow for class as well? First, we have to provide doc strings for that particular class level. Okay, class contains user related API endpoints. Okay, something like this. After that, what we can do? So here I'm going to declare a API objects related user. Okay, so first thing, create user is the one endpoint. Okay, create user. This one endpoint. Okay. Now another endpoint, user related update. Okay. Update account is one endpoint. Update user. Okay. Verify login. Verify login is one more user. So when we can use verify login, after creating the user, we can verify, right, whether it is able to log in with that particular user email password. Verify login. And verify login. Delete account. Delete account. See, this code looks good. So the way we are writing variable names, right, we have to follow the same convention. Okay, proper convention. Okay, so some people will write like this. So one is with uppercase, another one is like this. Does make sense? Maybe it is valid, but it won't make sense. Okay, so here if you follow only one convention, that will until end of the application. Okay, So these are the API objects we have. Now we are going to create a helper function. Okay, helpers. Okay. So what it will do, this helpers. What it will do, this helpers means here we are going, instead of say helpers, you can say utility function. Okay, rename utilities. Okay, so generally utilities will be in two levels. One is in this API level and top of this Python project level also. Okay, so this utility is only useful for this APIs. Okay, API testing folder. Okay, so here under utilities, I'm going to create a function Python. Sorry, Python file. Okay, API login instead of user utilities. Okay, user utilities. Okay, so here what are the activities we can perform? First, we can create a doc strings contains user related utilities. Okay, author. We can create a class, and class is having what we can provide the class name user API. Okay, so here what I have to do, I have to create a function to perform each activity. Okay, let's say df create user account. Okay, this is create a user account function. Okay, create a user account function. So first, what are the key points I need to create the user account? First, I need endpoint along with path param. If it is there, path param. Correct. Before that, what I need? URL, endpoint, and payload. Correct. These are the points I need. Okay. Now, and along with that, the method type also we need, right? What is the method type? Maybe to create account, we need post method. Okay. We need post method to create the account. Okay. So here I'm going to create one more function called helpers. Helpers. So in this folder, I'm going to create a Python file. Let's say API helpers. Okay. So in this helper file, I'm going to create a class. And doc strings, anyhow, we need to provide doc strings. Okay. You guys can write class API helpers. Something. Okay. So here, actual code, what we are talking about, methods, right? Those methods I'm going to write. Okay. If I want to perform get method, I want to write a get method. Okay. How we can write a function method? By using def keyword get API. Okay, that's it. Just I'm creating the skeleton. Going forward, we can see what are the arguments it will take. Post API, patch. So what is the use of pass statement? Patch put API. Delete API. Okay, like this I have created functions. Just declare the functions. Okay, now so if I want to perform this get method, what are the points I need to get it? First thing, URL. Okay, URL, correct. I can keep it URL here. And what we can say, this is the API endpoint. Assume that it is API endpoint. So this time, what I'm going to do, along with the query path parameter, I'm going to use the API endpoint. Okay. So API endpoints where we have declaring here, right? Okay. User create user API is there, and helper is there. Now test case, we can create a test folder. Okay. Test folder. Tests. Okay. Under this test folder, I'm going to create the test cases. So what is the convention we have to follow while writing the test file? We have to use test underscore. It is related to user test user details. Let's say test user details test case file. Okay. Now here you can add the doc strings like this file contains tests related to user account. Okay. Now here I can write the test cases. So before, what we have to follow the convention, class test user account. Okay. Let's make it like this. So this is the test class. Okay. This is the test class. Now here I want to write the test cases. First, I want to write a test case, test create user account. Okay, create user account. This is my test case. Okay. Now, from where we have to start writing the test case. Okay. In the framework, we've seen we gathered the API objects. Okay. For the create user, we need create account. Okay. And what type of method we need to use? Get method. And test case name we have used. Okay. Even utilities we have declared user related utilities. So for create account, what are the key points we need? Key points. Okay. So create account, what it will take? If you guys see post method, where is that post? Post method. Okay. So for the create account, what type of method we are using? Post method. Okay. So in the body, what it is taking? It is required all the key value page in the form of JSON key, right? Name, email. This we can say payload. Okay. Now, where we can declare the payload? Can we create a test data folder? Can we create a test data folder? test data. Okay, test data folder. Inside that, I'm going to use Python file user account.py. Okay, user account.py. So here I can declare my class again, user account test data. Okay, test data class. So guys, doxing it is common. You guys can follow. You can add. Okay. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to declare all my user details. Let's say user create user data. So can I declare as a dictionary? Right? Can I declare as a dictionary? If I see here,
Yes.
so this is the payload. Okay. So we have to copy all this data. Okay, maybe the okay. Here from here we can copy this data. Okay, I am providing as a dictionary. Okay. Now just we can remove this ID is not required. Anyhow, name, email, title, date of birth, blah blah blah. These are the required details we need for user creation. Correct. Okay. So sometimes in point of interview they will ask where you can store the test data. Okay, you can say that I have a test file, test folder. Inside the test folder, we are creating the test data. Okay. Okay. So this is my dictionary. Okay. Okay. Now we have the test case folder, test file, test case name, and helper methods for related to that. Now from where I have to start writing. Okay. So here I'm going to call the helper function. Okay. Helpers where we are writing. So this is API helpers, utilities. Okay. User utilities. Okay. So here I'm going to start the writing the helper function. Okay. So what I can write. So first, which method we need to import, which model we need to import to do API testing. We need to import request mod request. Okay. So if it is not there, what we have to do from the terminal, we can say pip install request. Okay. So for now, you guys can do like this, or else in real time, what we can do, all these required packages we can keep in requirements.txt file. Okay, requirements.txt file we can provide to install. Here you can see that request is already there, and how we can run the requirement.txt file. Pip install -r requirements.txt. Okay, so it will install all the packages. It is there in the requirements.txt file. Okay, let's see. So it is already installed. Okay, so this is the way we can create requirements.txt file and run it. Okay, so many people is fail here itself. They they are not aware how to run the packages from the requirement.txt file, etc. Okay, now we can start. So here I'm going to call the test case function. It is there, the help utilities function. Okay, create a user account. To create the user account, what are the required things? First, we need URL, correct? URL. Okay, from where we will get it. Okay, for now, what I'm going to do, URL I'm putting here itself. Okay, as a variable. Okay, URL. Okay, now, so which method is required to create the user account? Post method, correct? Where we have written the post method related helper, post API. Okay, so here, sorry, post user account, user details. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, I'm going to call the post method. Okay, where it is there from the helpers. Okay, so how we can import packages from, so if you remember, we discussed about packages, right? So can we call this one as a package, utilities as a package, right? So this is a package. Okay, here I have a helpers, I need to import helper methods here in my utilities. How I can import? From API practice, but helpers, import API helpers. Okay, so just I have imported API helpers. Okay, so here what is the class name? API helpers. Okay, I will directly also mm, second, yes. Okay. I'm going to create object API helper. Okay. So instead of API helpers, I can import the class itself. Import API helper. Okay. So once we have the class, can we create an object of this class? Okay. Once we create object, we can able to access all these methods using this object reference, right? So here I'm going to using the API object. So API object. Which method we can use to create the user account? Post method. Okay, post method. So what are the parameters we need for post method? If you guys can see here, what are the required parameters? We need to send the payload, correct? We need to send the URL. We need to send the API, right? So here we can provide the arguments, function arguments. Once again, okay. So here the post method takes it required URL along with API. Okay. So we have API URL. Okay. Where is our API object? Create account. Okay. Even I can specify path parameter here. Path param. Okay. Something. Now, so this function I can modify slightly. Okay. So it takes URL. Okay. URL and API endpoint. You can say endpoint payload Okay, this is the data it will require arguments. Okay, these three arguments it is required. Okay, now while calling this function, so I need to provide URL, correct? URL I need to provide, so I can get it URL and API object endpoint. Okay, endpoint equals. So endpoint from where I can get it, where I have declared the endpoints, API objects, right? How I can use user API? Again, we need to import user API. 1 second, guys. Here we need to import API objects. Import user API. Okay. So the user API, we can create object of the user API here. Okay, user API is there. Using this user API, can we get these values? Can we get it right? Okay. So here I can say this is server.url. Okay. API server.api help for no. Where is that user API? Here we need to import from API practice, not API objects. Okay, so user API. Okay, both is having same name. We can modify slightly. User API objects. Okay. Okay. I can create object user API object. Okay. So I have created object for the class user self dot user object dot create user. Okay. So I can able to access from here create user endpoint. Okay. So generally if you go to the post method, it required URL, endpoint, and payload. So payload where we can create it from the test data. Okay. So here the test data we can import is that test data from API practice test data. What is the class name? User account test data. Okay. So I'm creating object for user account data test data also test data. Okay. Now using this test data, I can provide payload equals to test data dot create user. Okay, so this is the method. So this is the create user account function. Okay, now even if I want to make it dynamic, I can provide this arguments to here. Okay, so for now, just I have provided like this. We'll see create user, and maybe I can include in the API URL itself API path. Okay, now once we have this function, it should be written something. Okay, here what we have to do. So actually code method here we need to import requests module. Okay, so request module have it supports all all the methods like post patch. Okay, so here we are going to use post URL. I think here we can create URL equals to URL plus endpoint. Okay, we are concatenating the URL and payload we are providing. Okay, payload. Okay, and we can return response. Okay, so this is the way we can use. Now coming to the test case. Okay, where is user today? Okay, so once we have done user account creation, this post method is returning something. If you see here API method, it will return response. Okay, the same response we can use. Okay, so here I can say return. Okay, return. Now this create user account function I am going to call in my test case. How we can call this one? Again, we need to import user API. Okay, from API practice utilities